The U.S. Air Force's highly ambitious program for a sixth-generation fighter jet and related systems that will eventually replace the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor. However, the service believes a new plane with new tech is necessary to dominate current and future Russian and Chinese fighters. It's no secret that the sixth-generation fighter project will be a topic of conversation in today's global era, and the sixth-generation fighter may be very suitable for military aviation and the Air Force in particular. But Russia and China and other countries are behind it. A next-generation air dominance fighter will likely have greater range, carry larger weapon payloads, have more advanced sensors and information fusion systems, and all-aspect wideband stealth needed to maintain overmatch against China's increasingly sophisticated counter-air forces. As global threats evolve, particularly with the rise of China and the resurgence of Russia, the U.S. Air Force is looking towards the next-generation air dominance. However, the NGAD faces significant challenges, including its high cost, which could limit fleet size and affect long-term viability. There is a growing emphasis on adaptability and modularity in future aircraft designs, potentially leading to a light fighter concept that could be more cost-effective and flexible in addressing future threats. The Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, a fifth-generation air superiority fighter, remains unmatched in its capabilities. Yet it was developed during an era when the U.S. military's focus shifted away from near-peer conflicts. The United States Air Force remains the sole operator of the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, which, despite no air-to-air kills against a manned aircraft, has been described as the world's top air superiority fighter. The aircraft, developed at the tail end of the Cold War and entered production following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, could be described as the right fighter just at the wrong time. It wasn't what the U.S. military needed as it became engaged in the global war on terror, GWOT, and it seemed that the days of conflict with a near-peer adversary were a thing of the past. The GWOT wasn't ever won and arguably continues as elements like ISIS-K continue to operate, including an alleged planned attack earlier this month on a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna. Yet even before Russia mounted its unprovoked invasion of Ukraine more than 2.5 years ago, it seemed that the evil empire, the term the late great Ronald Reagan got it right this time, used to describe the Soviet Union, was returning, or at least in the mind of Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the same time, China increasingly rattles sabers as it seeks to take its self-perceived rightful place on the world stage. To the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, leadership in Beijing, this was to be China's century. Perhaps the F-22 is what is needed now. Except we must remember that it was developed back when Reagan was still eating jelly beans in the Oval Office. This brings us to today, when the Air Force has been exploring a replacement for the Raptor. That being said, NGAD may be the most important conventional weapons program of the early 21st century. If the Air Force can get it right, a powerful force of sixth-generation fighters, backed up by armed drones, could be a powerful deterrent to America's adversaries. If deterrence fails, it could help swiftly end a war that might otherwise wreck the world economy, or even go nuclear. The Next Generation Air Dominance (NGAD) program has sought to develop a systems of systems, including a manned sixth-generation fighter supported by unmanned loyal wingmen. It would seem exactly what is needed for a potential, yet unthinkable, conflict with a near-peer adversary such as China or Russia, and more importantly serve as a deterrent to ensure that such a conflict doesn't start. Each NGAD manned fighter could cost upwards of as much as 3 times that of the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II, bringing the total price tag to around $300 million per aircraft. That has led to concerns that the Air Service would have to reduce the number of aircraft in its fleet, which in turn means that losing any in accidents would be devastating. While critics have warned that combat losses would impact the Air Force's ability to effectively fight future wars. Another concern is that the aircraft developed today may not be the aircraft needed tomorrow. The F-22 Raptor was born out of the Air Force's Advanced Tactical Fighter (ATF) program, which began in 1981. In other words, many of the pilots flying the Raptor today weren't even born when fighters were being designed. To push that point home, cable TV was still a new thing and VHS was cutting-edge technology to watch movies in the home. Given the leap forward in technology in recent years, Pentagon officials are right to express concerns that an expensive fighter will be viable in decades to come. Department of the Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall warned earlier this year that efforts are underway to streamline the NGAD fighter's design, and that could include a less complex aircraft equipped with a potentially smaller engine that could lower future costs. The family of systems concept of next-generation air dominance is alive and well, Kendall told Defense News in an interview. I can tell you that we are looking at the NGAD platform design concept to see if it's the right concept or not. We're looking at whether we can do something that's less expensive and do some trade-offs there. The NGAD likely will continue, but as noted by Harrison Cass for the National Interest, the evolution of the aircraft could be to a light fighter. Cass based his analysis on comments made by U.S. Air Force General David Alvin at the Global Air and Space Chiefs Conference, hosted by the UK's Air and Space Power Association in London late in July, where Alvin suggested there needs to be a shift away from a built-to-last philosophy that was commonplace in the Cold War to a built-to-adapt philosophy of today. Back in the summer of 2022, it looked as though the next-generation air dominance, NGAD sixth-generation fighter jet program, was already on its way to being the next big thing, channeling WWE's Brock Lesnar's energy. In aerial combat technology, even though fifth-generation stealth fighters, such as America's F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, as well as China's Chengdu J-20, Fagan, and Russia's Sukhoi Su-57 Felon, were still fairly new on the scene and relatively untested in combat compared with fourth-generation fighters like the F-16 Fighting Falcon and F-15 Eagle. The NGAD program traces its roots back to March 2014. Hard to believe it's already been over 10 years since the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, completed a series of studies to explore concepts for air superiority systems of the 2030S for the U.S. Air Force, USAF, and U.S. Navy. Still, information about NGAD has slowly trickled out over the years. In 2020, Roper stated the sixth-generation fighter would likely carry its own AI co-pilot, a software version of the R2-D2 drone that accompanied Luke Skywalker's X-Wing fighter in the Star Wars films. In 2022, Kendall testified to Congress that the plane would cost hundreds of millions each, a figure that was later clarified to be about $250–300 million each. Then, in 2023, Kendall stated the Air Force wanted a minimum of 200 NGAD fighters, along with 1,000 drone wingmen to accompany them into battle. Each NGAD plane would control between 1 and 5 high-performance drones, known as Collaborative Combat Aircraft, CCA. Powered by artificial intelligence and carrying sensors, jammers, and missiles, each CCA drone will act as a force multiplier in the air, giving the manned fighter the ability to see farther, shoot farther, and engage more adversaries, all without endangering more human lives. Based on the results of these studies, the U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, launched the Aerospace Innovation Initiative, AII, in 2015 to develop X-plane prototypes to demonstrate technology for future fighter aircraft. Well, it boils down to dollars and cents. As my national interest colleague Stavros Atlamazoglu elaborates in an article published just last month, with the F-35 Lightning II estimated to cost the U.S. military over $2 trillion, the Air Force is wary of a repeat performance with NGAD. The Air Force estimates that each NGAD stealth fighter jet could cost up to $300 million, making it an awfully expensive aircraft, and the Air Force doesn't seem willing to pay that price. For the basis of comparison, the Lightning II costs around $80 million USD per unit, according to the National Interest's Harrison Cass. However, for all the controversies surrounding the F-35 over its high costs and reports of reliability issues, at least it's now a battle-proven platform, thanks to the Israeli Air Force, who used their F-35I Adir. If you enjoy content like this, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this video because I appreciate all your support.